All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nourished and Thriving Show. I'm Katie Lovett, the host of this show and the owner of Nourished and Thrive Nutrition Counseling. And I hear a lot. I actually was talking with a new patient today on the phone. We've been trying to connect for like 6 weeks. And so I was so grateful to be able to finally have the chance to speak with her. And I was asking her about what she was hoping to achieve through working with a dietitian. And she said, just knowing what to do. She said, it's so confusing. I feel like I'm trying things, but I don't really even know if what I'm doing is the right thing to be doing. And so, there's so much information out there, and a lot of it sounds right. A lot of it makes sense. I think we talked about this maybe last week about people are really good at marketing, right? And selling things. And whenever you're reading something or watching a video, you're like, oh yeah, I can totally see how that, works and that makes sense. But then you'll scroll and see something that's the exact opposite of it. And it makes sense too. So then you're kind of stuck in the middle and you're either swinging from those extremes, like we were talking about in last week's show, or you're kind of paralyzed and scared to try anything. And so it's just a lot. So one area where I do see that a lot is in this area of blood sugar. I A lot of people in America, I can't remember the number. Our guest tonight can tell us the number. I bet she has it memorized. Of people struggle with blood sugar control, or if you don't, you probably know somebody who does. And a lot of the time, there's been kind of this myth up until now too, or just lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. Like we've said on this show before, nutrition is a pretty new science and it's rapidly changing as we discover more and more about nutrition and how food interacts in our bodies. So sometimes still, whenever people think about blood sugar, they don't think it matters unless you have diabetes or you have a high A1C and your doctor is now wanting to prescribe medication. A lot of the time people aren't really concerned about it or thinking about it in the 10, 20, 30 years leading up until that point. And it really can impact so much more than just a diabetes diagnosis or not. And so if you are in that camp, if you've ever looked at your own blood sugar and it's going up and you're thinking, now what? What do I do? My doctor said, just wait until it hits the diabetes zone and then we'll start giving you medication. If you've been in that boat or someone that you care for today's guest has the answer with that. I'm so excited to have Karen Kennedy, who's a functional nutritionist and metabolic expert who believes that you are the scientist in charge of your own body. How cool and empowering is that, you guys? She has monitored hundreds of individuals, and Karen has discovered that most of us fall into 6 distinct metabolic patterns that she calls glucotypes. It's pretty cool. In her new book that is heavily flagged and underlined here, Hack Your Blood Sugar, she not only gives you a complete user guide to continuous glucose monitors, she shares a system of using CGMs to uncover your glucotype and improve your blood sugar for the price of a few glucose monitors. And she even helps you figure out how to do it in the cheapest way possible. She's here to help us make sense of our health data and get results. And I added a personal note to this. I've been following her work for a few years now. I was telling her before the live stream started that, I was doing only gut health stuff. And so I was really continuous glucose monitor curious, but it didn't really align with the work I was doing at the time, but I still found it so fascinating. So I've been following along with her for a while now. We've also crossed paths through IFNA, which is the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, where we were both trained, and she's currently on faculty. I'm telling you guys, she is the real deal. So you're always such a light, Karen, and I'm so happy to have you here with us tonight. So welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you, Katie. Oh, what a warm introduction. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So this book is incredible. And I told you I was going to share the picture on the screen, but I just held it my copy instead. We're going to share a QR code to this later in the show. But if you go into Amazon and search Hack Your Blood Sugar, Karen Kennedy book, Amazon has AI info now. I just searched Hack Your Blood Sugar the other day, and it was trying to share like Google search result information on ways to hack your blood sugar. I was like, no, like sell me something, Amazon. I was really caught off guard by that. But
I got to say, it warms my heart to see all those sticky notes stuffed in there. That is
I
so
mean,
nerdy. Wonderful. I love
it's
it.
very nerdy, and like a lot of pages are underlined. I like was totally geeking out, and I actually was joking with Karen before the show. It's like, I'm gonna sit down and say, all right, guys, tonight we're having story time. We're gonna do a read aloud with the author because it's such good information, like truly brilliant, like the right mix. Like it's readable. I'm reading another nutrition book for some continuing ed right now, and it's so dry and it's great information, but it's one of those books where you're like, I can read it for 10 minutes and I've got to go take a break because it's just very dense. Like this is like sprinkled with anecdotal evidence, case studies, like personal
Patient stories,
patient stories, ways to apply it. Like it was a good balance of like information, but then this is what you actually do with it and what it means. Like I have like chills talking about it because that's how big of a geek I am. Like this is so good. I actually sent it to a friend in North Carolina. Like yesterday, she reached out, and she's like, I wish I could hire you and I need help. I have this like stubborn weight loss. She's a young mom and she was meeting with a functional person who had her on like 50 different supplements and hormones and nothing was changing. And I was like, order this book. Get a continuous glucose monitor, try it for 2 weeks and let me know how it goes. So
cool.
Really, really a good book. But I'm always curious before we jump into the world of CGMs, because we have some really great information to share specifically with our friends who typically join us live. I always like to get a little into the background information of people and understand how you got to where you are in your career right now. Because we were talking before the show about you're not a dietitian, you are a clinical nutritionist from Bastyr University, which is like the same, you could have become a dietitian. But I'm always curious why you chose that, how you got into it, how you got into function, all of that.
Yeah. Well, nutrition was not my first career. My first career, I studied biochem and went into research, and I was doing kind of cancer and immunotherapeutic research for pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies. And that was a really fascinating career, and I loved it. And I liked medicine. I was interested in that. But I'll say that after a period of time, there was a few things that made me jump into nutrition. And one was ethics. I think there were some things going on in the research and biotech and pharmaceutical companies, which you could guess that I just didn't feel great about. And also I became more and more interested while I was interested in health and healing, I started getting more interested in how can people prevent disease, and I got interested in how could I help people kind of heal themselves. And that's where I thought, maybe I'll go to nutrition instead. That seemed like a good fit. I mean, it's always an advantage when you go to study nutrition when you already have a strong background in biochemistry, because so much of, Krebs cycle, etc. And so that I made the jump. And I was lucky. I was working and living in Seattle at the time, and Bastyr was in my backyard. And I was like, well, that's perfect. And so that was it. And then, at that, with my interest there and being at Bastyr, functional nutrition was a logical extension of that. But, I finished my master's degree there in 2001. But while I was there, that's when Jeff Bland was starting the Institute of Functional Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some, they always offer student rates. And I remember attending one of the longevity and hormone, they had their 3-day modules, and it was in Seattle. So I had an opportunity as a student to attend that. And so that was in 2000, I think. And I still have back then you didn't just get downloads, you got the whole spiral packet.
Oh yeah. The whole book.
It's still on my shelf. And that I was like, this dude, functional, this is it. but then I had a bit of a detour because right when I was graduating in 2001, I was also studying yoga. I was really into the yoga, as you are. And I went and did some training with a teacher who I was really interested in over in Italy. And I met this guy. But he lived in England and he owned a yoga studio there. And so when I graduated a few months later, I decided it was a good idea to just leave everything and move to England onto a farm and become an illegal farm worker on a big organic farm. And I ran their kitchen so that I could hook up with this guy who's now my husband. So I had a detour there, and that's where I started working. I started my practice living over in England. So I did not have access to all the cool functional medicine training.
Yeah.
But that's what I was doing. And that's what, anyways, so that's kind of how I came to it. And then more stories. I'm not a spring chicken. So there was more and more. And eventually I finally came back to it and managed to get back in. And that's where I found IFNA.
Yeah.
Because by the time I came back, I had kids, I homeschooled my kids, and I was like, oh, I need a little freshening up on my skills. I'm still interested in functional nutrition. And I called up a colleague of mine who I went to Bastyr with, and my friend Maggie, who's up at the Ultra Wellness Center. And I'm like, Maggie, should I do IFM? What should I do? And she says, oh, you should do IFNA. IFNA is all the way, because she knew Kathy and everyone. And so on her recommendation, I went to IFNA and finished my training there. And, the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible program. It's what brought me back to nutrition, because I went and worked for the food industry after college in LA. And I did their nutrition marketing and regulatory work.
Okay.
Because I was so disheartened from the clinical side of just feeling like I'm seeing 30 patients a day. I feel like I'm literally checking a box on a paper, walking into someone who's just had a quadruple bypass, handing him a outdated on a heart healthy diet just so he can get discharged. He's not in a position to receive that information.
Yeah.
And so I got an incredible job opportunity, high paying and good, cool travel.
If you're not going to help people, you might as well make good money.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, you know what? If I could at least make sure this stuff's labeled correctly, then that's having probably a bigger impact than me going around the hospital, not feeling like I'm, impacting anyone. Then I had my first child, did not return, and didn't think I'd ever go back to nutrition. And then I think I somehow found out about DIFM.
That's how a lot of people get in.
And I had like their intro course, and then through that started IFNA and all of that. And I don't have my IFNCP up, but I did earn it. So and just from there kind of sprung into private practice. And I never really practiced before since I was in corporate. And so lots of learning about documentation and charting and running a business and all of that. But,
all of that.
Yeah. So it's been wild. So what do you feel like, how did you get into how did you become the CGM guru?
Yeah.
How did all of your functional stuff turn in that direction?
I was always really interested in the blood sugar insulin thing. And I'll say, at the time that I started my practice and was transitioning from graduate school to working, that was when Gerald Raven was going on about Syndrome X. So before that, it was still very much the, fat is bad and cholesterol drives heart disease and it's all fat. And he was really bringing it to light that actually it's hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance is driving a lot of this. And as an 80s kid, that was just revolutionary to me. And I glommed onto that. I never really lost interest, because when I started looking at things through that lens for some of my patients, that's when I noticed things started to change for them, and it really helped. And how that transitioned over to continuous glucose monitors. I mean, how it is when you're working and you start seeing these types of people and you can't put your finger on, it seems like I always get this kind of person, and I think I know what would help them, but I feel like I just had some data that behind me, I wish I knew what that person's blood sugar was doing. I just can't figure it out. And then, in like 2018, 2019-ish, I started listening to podcasts this people were doing, and I started hearing about people using these continuous glucose monitors for not for type 1 diabetes, but they were mostly biohackers or having a high-end practice using them with patients. I thought, oh, that would be so sweet. But I just, how you assume things are probably so expensive. You require a prescription. Oh, I couldn't get that. And you just assume. And I think I wrote in the book, the very intro of the book was watching, I was at the gym and I was sitting on the bench as you do, waiting in between sets, trying to lift weights. And I see Sports Center commercial for free. It was Freestyle Libre. Try our free trial. I'm like, I'll try a free trial. Get my phone out. I got it. I got the free trial. And I'm like, oh, I have to have a prescription though to get it. I take the free trial coupon to the pharmacy, but I have to have a prescription. But I did. I just took a chance and I texted my doctor, who I actually have a personal work relationship with. And she's like, yeah, I'll write a prescription for that. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that she's actually a functionally trained MD. And she's like, yeah, sure, you got it. Yeah. And that was it. And then I started figuring out how to do it.
That's really cool. Yeah. And you write about that in the book, like what to do and stuff too. So, wow. So what do you think whenever now, probably now CGMs are widely available. You can get them over the counter pretty recently. A couple of years ago is when that started. I do feel like I think there's still people thinking cholesterol is the problem, fat is the problem, but I do feel like there's slowly a shift happening, right? Where people are like, oh, it is blood sugar. It does matter outside of diabetes. What do you feel like people are missing the most still whenever it comes to thinking about blood sugar? And can you help us explain maybe why it's important for overall health and not just that context?
There's a couple of sides of this, and this is partly behind the whole glucotype thing. And one part of it is that what I call dysregulated blood sugar, where you're spiking up really high and crashing and high and crashing. And so it's just causing your whole system a lot of stress to have to regulate it, because, we have systems in our body that are managed with what's called homeostasis. Your body's trying to keep it in range, like your blood pressure and your pH of your blood and your temperature and your blood sugar. And so anytime you stress that to one extreme or another, it's a lot of work for the body to like balance it out. And when we take our blood sugar to extremes, our body doesn't deal with that well. So it actually, erratic blood sugar adds stress to the system, increases stress. And people feel it. It saps their energy. It raises their cortisol levels by the end of the day. It's very hard. And as we've talked about before, some people are more sensitive to this, especially folks with dysautonomia and POTS. That can throw them off. But on the other side, so that's just your glucose levels going up and down. But when you look at it from the insulin perspective, and for your listeners who don't know what insulin is, you probably know that insulin regulates blood sugar. But when you eat food and glucose gets absorbed into your bloodstream and your glucose levels go up, your body wants to bring it down into this little Goldilocks zone. And so insulin's job is to be secreted by the pancreas and like skim off that excess and store it away for later when you're between meals. But insulin does more than just store away your glucose. If insulin levels are chronically high because you're chronically eating a lot more carbohydrates than you need, then that insulin does other things in the body. It, first of all, of course, drives visceral fat, and that visceral fat increases inflammation. That visceral fat produces inflammatory cytokines. And I think now that we've all had COVID, we know what cytokines are, that these inflammatory molecules that immune cells make. And so when you have this chronically high insulin, even if you don't care about the long term, even if you're like, I'll never get heart disease, cancer, dementia, that's so far in advance, I don't care. Right now, you're going to have more inflammation, brain fog, more pain, you're just going to feel crap.
Yeah.
And so at the very least, you're just not going to feel good when your blood sugar is dysregulated.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's much more generalized, and it's not a maybe down the road it'll have a negative effect. It truly can affect how you feel on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe that's part, well, that probably is part of the bump in energy people see when they start feeling better. It's not just like, oh, you're actually eating foods with nutrients in them so your body can go make energy and do the jobs it needs to do, like we've talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
It's not having to fatigue itself working so hard to maintain that level, that homeostasis, the Goldilocks, right, you said. So yeah, it's really fascinating. And then the visceral adipose tissue, that's like the worst kind of fat, right? Like that's the non-alcoholic. It's not called non-alcoholic fatty liver anymore, but that's all I can think of.
Right. It's MASLD now, metabolic associated steatotic,
yes,
basically fatty liver because of metabolic disease.
Yeah. So used to, it was kind of an indirect, like, oh, you have fatty liver. We don't really know why. It's not caused by alcohol. And now they're like, it's metabolic associated, which we've already always kind of known. It just wasn't directly called that before.
Right.
So that's really, I think, a win in acknowledging the impact of metabolism. And, by metabolism, we mean the functioning of the, cellular functions of our body, not almost think of like, oh, I have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism, and like what that means about how much food you can eat. I mean, yes, kind of, but like it's much more complex than that. Yes. So you touched on the people with like the POTS and all of that. Tell me a little bit about what you see with like chronic pain, chronic illness, and how does these dysregulated blood sugars, dysregulated insulin levels, which it sounds like just as much of an important part of that, not just the blood sugar, the insulin being around can cause harm as well. What do you see in people suffering from, chronic pain, chronic inflammation, chronic illness, and these kind of erratic levels?
I'm going to speak, I want to speak more specifically to people who have chronic pain because of, say, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos and POTS and MCAS, because that's a population that I used to work with a lot. And I'll just kind of tell you how I came about this. So I was working with a group with Tracy Rodriguez who to support people with hypermobility and chronic pain with those conditions. And at some point in the middle of that, that's when I started using continuous glucose monitors more. And at a certain point, I noticed the people that I was working with it just seemed like they were so dysregulated in a lot of different ways, which is dysautonomia. And so I started suggesting, why don't you have a continuous glucose monitor? I want to see what your blood sugar is doing. And this is what I noticed without exception in the people I put this on, was that, when you watch a glucose curve in someone who, in most people, someone who doesn't have diabetes or even pre-diabetes, this is what it looks like for most people is, it'll be riding along around 80, 100, and then they'll eat something and maybe it'll go up to 140 mg per deciliter in US units. And then it comes back down. And it's just kind of just a little curve. And you don't feel anything. It's fine. Your body's taking care of it. Now, I should say, if these people have that same curve, exactly the same curve, they will feel like they have hypoglycemia on the way down from 140. Wow. And I saw that and I thought, they said, because they would put a note in their CGM app. I'm like, oh, I just feel all kind of, sometimes they would say potsy, but dizzy, a lot of the symptoms for hypoglycemia, which overlap with the symptoms of POTS. That's really interesting because you never got actually hypoglycemic. It even got below 80.
Normal response, just looking at the graph.
It was like that rapid of a change was too much for their bodies. And it's interesting. And it's not unusual when someone has type 2 diabetes, when they're dropping down still in the normal range, to experience that kind of thing too. So I thought that was really interesting. What do you do? said, well, maybe we should keep a tighter lid on your blood sugar, tighten things up. And that helped. And so using a CGM, we could, and this is why I love a CGM. It feels like I'm cheating. I don't have to do my job. I just can stand there and go, what were you eating? Well, maybe let's not do that again. Or if you were eating that because we have a little protein beforehand to level that out, maybe we smooth it out. And so they would experiment and see, actually, like if I just eat in such a way that 120 is my ceiling, 120 mg per deciliter, then their body seems to like it. And then it's just experimentation of how do I eat? What kind of meals work better? What kind of meals don't work? And I remember one gal, and a lot of these folks have either they have high histamine levels because of their mast cells dumping histamine. And some of them are sensitive to histamine in foods. And so we would sometimes try a low histamine diet. And I hate a low histamine diet. Right. It's just a real pain in the neck. So I would always test it. I'm like, do we need a low histamine diet? Do we, and I remember this one gal saying, high histamine foods really get me, but actually regulating my blood sugar helps me feel more stable more of the time than anything else.
Wow.
And what's tricky about that with this population is they're nauseous a lot. They get gastroparesis. Always wake up nauseous. And, we all know what it feels like to be nauseous. You don't want food. And if you do, you just want like a cracker or a little soda, some sugar.
Yeah.
And so it keeps the cycle going. And so.
And down and up and down.
Yes. Yeah. So I saw that being part of their picture. So that's not directly pain related, but I see that in the chronic pain community, POTS and blood sugar regulation helping that. Now, the other part of that is just inflammation in general, because if they're eating in a way that's causing chronically high insulin levels, that's going to increase their inflammation bucket. And I know for a fact that if we can lower the total inflammation burden, that can calm the mast cells down a little bit.
Yeah.
And mast cells are visceral hypersensitivity. They kick off all the pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you're kind of turning it down from like a raging fire to like a slow burn. And it's, it's always really interesting. I think most people, probably every patient I've worked with pretty complex medical conditions, chronic pain, chronic inflammation, chronic GI symptoms, they don't expect for 100% resolution of their symptoms. But if you can keep somebody from, with POTS, from every time they eat something throughout the day, feeling like they're potsy afterwards, that's improving their symptoms by
oh my gosh.
Just right there, probably, right? Which is huge. And nobody, I guarantee, their cardiologist isn't looking at that. No other doctors are looking at that.
And I want to say that this isn't a one and done. Everybody knows that chronic pain, there's doing a lot of things a little bit to just kind of keep things contained.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can change, right? And then this works for a while, and then, something else needs to change.
You go into a moldy building and there we go.
Yeah. But no, that's really fascinating. So with all of that, with chronic illness and living in America, a lot of people are suffering from chronic stress, ongoing stress. And it's like the baseline of existence is just at an elevated level. And I thought it was so interesting in your book, the patient story, where there's two. There was one that was like the guy.
There's a whole 2 chapters devoted to stress.
Oh, yeah. It was just like the accountant, like his.
Oh, yes.
It was crazy during tax season, those like 2 weeks. And then it like improved. Went back to how it had been. And then the guy that was on the session with you, and you were like, gee, are you stressed out about meeting with me? I know. And he's like, no, I'm so excited.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So stress isn't always bad stress.
Not always bad stress.
Good stress too. And so people who are just bouncier, high energy people, what do you see happening with them?
Gosh. Well, first of all, this has been such a learning experience for me, because you know how when you're working with a client, there's only so much you can know about them, and you learn so much more over time. And like the accountant who and tax it, I'm still working with this accountant, by the way. So we're navigating post-tax season right now.
You're
Who
like,
she's
okay,
talking about.
it's
Yeah.
okay.
He doesn't seem like a high stress person. He's a very jokey, happy-go-lucky. And so I wouldn't have guessed stress. He wouldn't have guessed it. And so that the CGM actually makes it visible.
Yeah.
Because most of us who are high stress, it's our type. It's just how we are. We don't notice it. It's kind of the air that we breathe. It's just our standard operating, system. And so in that case, the stress was very negative. It's having very negative consequences for him. But then the other fellow that you're talking about, his stress was coming when he was really excited, really jazzed. And in fact, that same person that Katie's talking about for the listener, he was just up in that pre-diabetes range, but everything else looked good on him. And we realized it was during his workday that his baseline just bumped up. Like you were talking about today in America, it seems like it's just, oomph. And I see that on my patients whenever there's a political thing that's just a big brouhaha. I get on with everybody and they're everything's just up. And it's so interesting how this collective stress is impacting the health of people. But also that this person, we realized, actually it's when he's the most excited, when he's the most engaged, when he's in his flow state, his blood sugar is a little elevated. And that was new territory for me. Do you tell someone like that to just stop work, to stop what you're doing? This passion that you have, do you need to stop it? When the whole reason you want them to have good health is so they can enjoy their purpose. And is it really unhealthy at the end of the day? So the jury is still out. And I mean, I would say that it was a good awareness. I didn't have an answer, but I said, that's interesting that you are maintaining a kind of a high stress load, and it just might highlight a need to periodically toggle, set a timer, take a walk, make sure you take a walk at lunch, toggle into some breathing exercises, do something at the end of the day, a little, relaxing yoga at the end of the day, just to acknowledge the fact that you need to come down before you cruise into your evening. So I think it was sometimes, we get these things where we can build awareness of a person, you can learn about yourself. There aren't always hard, certain answers.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. And then kind of like you said too, like, I'm not going to go tell them to quit their job that they love, either. And I think it kind of goes back to like not creating a prison of health rules either. Like,
yes,
people come to work with us, right? So that they're not trapped in a prison of chronic illness, or preventing that as much as possible or working to improve it. But I think it can go to that other extreme of people create so many health rules. I don't eat out. I don't ever have a glass of wine. I never do this. I always do that. I quit my job because I want to maintain these perfect lab values. And it's like, but what's the point, of doing
exactly. I think I'm going to tie this into the introduction that you were talking about is, you're online and you keep hearing people marketing these methods, and this works really well. And then this works really well. And so we feel like we have to do all of the things we've heard are good. And I'll say that one of my passions, one of my real, like, this is my job, because a lot of people who are really gung-ho about their health and want to optimize, they will find me. And part of my job is to let them know when they've done a due diligence, when they've done enough. This is, you've done your health thing. Now go do your life. This is good enough.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so important to help set that boundary. And, a lot of those people are probably like the high achieving, wanting to tick all the boxes and do everything the right way, and I think it can very, very quickly slip into, almost a disordered relationship.
Orthorexia.
With those health metrics. So I love that you help set that boundary for your patients too, and you're able to really be that objective sounding board for them, to help them see that. So stress is a factor. We didn't really talk about how stress causes that. We talked about how it's stressful on the body, and maintaining blood sugar levels is stressful, like creates stress. But how does stress actually cause issues?
And this ties into chronic pain, because, if people are having chronic pain, their stress levels are higher. It's just always going to be higher. If nothing else, maybe they don't sleep as well or as soundly. And so that's creating a higher cortisol level for the next day. But there's always higher stress levels when there's chronic pain. And yeah, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. High erratic blood sugar will increase cortisol and stress levels, and stress impacts your blood sugar. So stress, what is stress? It can be a lot of different things. And there's two stress hormones that I would say make the biggest difference. And one is the short-acting stress, which is your adrenaline or epinephrine. And this is your fight or flight hormone that you get. If you sort of swerve and almost hit somebody, you feel this rush of adrenaline pop up, or you're going to be late. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on in just 5 minutes.
Every second day.
Yeah. And when you get that rush of adrenaline, that adrenaline actually tells your liver to release a whole bunch of glucose. And that's a survival thing, because if you're encountering, something in the wild that's really dangerous, like, the tiger coming towards you, or your ex-boyfriend with his new girlfriend, you've got to run, fight, think your way out of stuff. And that requires energy. And so your body's like, oh, well, there's a danger. Let's free up a whole bunch of energy to fuel your brain, to fuel your muscles, and get this going. And so you can see a huge spike, and it is really dependent on the person, on how we're wired. Especially if somebody has a history of trauma, they're going to spike higher. They're going to have a bigger stress response, and then a bigger glucose spike along with that stress.
Interesting.
So that's a short one. And that's why you'll see the guy who got on a call with me, and immediately his blood sugar went up, because his body's like, we're going to meet with Karen. We got to bring it. But then there's cortisol. And a lot of people know of cortisol now. It's much maligned, cortisol. We think it's so bad, but cortisol is a hormone. It's a stress hormone, but it naturally comes up in the morning, first thing in the morning, when you're starting to wake, or before you wake up. Your body is secreting your biggest peak of cortisol for the day. And you think of cortisol as that can-do hormone that is going to get out of bed, and it's going to tell the liver, hey, we need a little fuel, not like tons, but just start putting it out, because we got to get up and do things. And then cortisol naturally wanes throughout the day until it's nice and low at bedtime. And then your melatonin kicks in. But when you have chronic stress throughout the day, like maybe you have one of those days where it's just putting out fires all day long, just stress, this phone calls, then your body's sort of like, I see you're having a tough time today, Karen. Maybe we could use a little cortisol to just get this through this day. And that's where you feel your second wind. When you're like, oh, I was just dragging. Now I've got this. I've got my second wind. That's cortisol is like bumped up now in the afternoon, and you can finish everything, or you can stay up late and study, or, stay by the fires and stay awake. So cortisol comes in, and both cortisol and adrenaline will do this. They will encourage the liver to secrete more glucose. So you've got more glucose coming into the system, and they cause a little insulin resistance, and they suppress your insulin production. So now you got more glucose, and your insulin isn't being made so well.
Stopping it from both sides. Stopping your cells from being able to store it, because insulin is what helps escort that glucose into the cells. So it's blocked there. And you said you're producing more insulin.
The tap is on and the drain is plugged.
Yep. Thank you. Beautiful picture. Yeah. So it's like literally a double doozy on the blood sugar.
Yeah. And it's so hard, because this is the cycle I think everyone can relate to. You have day, you'll have periods of time where you are just exhausted, and you end every day just running on fumes, which is kind of that late surge cortisol. And eventually it kind of kicks off, and that night we're just like, oh, sleep, just like take me you can't sleep
Yeah.
because you've got all this cortisol.
Yeah.
And then you don't sleep. And then the next day, that increases your cortisol more because, you know, being short on sleep, you will always have a little higher cortisol. And you'll see baseline blood sugars elevated the next day. You're spikier with the same meals. Now they're problem. And that's your next day. So it's so unfair.
Yeah. So stress and sleep and pain are like, you know, big things that can drive that. And I think what you said about people having different spikes to the same food, that's huge because people will get frustrated and they're like, I don't get it. I'm, you know, have like, it's fine.
I have the same breakfast every day. What is going on?
And so maybe that's a good opportunity to look at the other factors, like what else can be causing, you know, to you to react this way. So it's not always just about what you're eating. And last week we talked about personalities of different professionals. I was asking if dietitians are the part of the problem whenever it comes to our nation's health. And we were talking about, you know, like engineers tend to be very analytical and like formulaic, but then they can forget the human element, which is not predictable. And dietitians, you talked about this in your book too.
The dietitian syndrome.
The dietitians, you know, where we're high achieving, we want to do things the right way, and we're eating right
perfectly
high. And I think you said you were having someone lay down with a sleeping mask over their eyes with their legs up on a wall for 10 minutes and her blood sugar came down.
Yeah.
To like the normal levels. So it's not just cutting carbs. And I think that's a huge misnomer from people that I talk with of like, I need to cut out carbohydrates to bring my A1C down.
And that's what I will see people, especially dietitians who I'm training. They're like, okay, my blood sugar, my baseline was higher than it should be. And so I tried fasting. I tried this. I cut out more carbs. And now it's even higher. And I'm like, okay, gonna take a deep breath. And I think it's your stress. It's not stress. I'm like, you need to cut out more things. I'm like, food is only going to get you so far. I know you're an expert. Yeah. I recommend more of these, like at the end of the day, I want you to do 10 minutes, legs up the wall, eye pillow, or breathing practices to, again, I used that word before, to toggle into that parasympathetic mode. Just toggle into it every now and then. Remind your body, hey, we're just going to relax for a few minutes.
And it's really challenging if you are not practicing that. If you are a more high-strung person, I hear from people all the time, like, I can't turn my brain off. I've tried meditation, it doesn't work. And I read somewhere, I can't remember who I first heard it from, but they were like, well, meditation is a practice. And so if everyone is good at it, like you wouldn't have to, you practice it, right? You're not good at first, you know, so do start with a couple minutes. And then from there, like, you don't have to sit in silence probably for it to work. Turn on some music that helps you kind of get into that relaxed zone. I was getting a hydro today and she had a cooling sheet mask on my face and an LED light over me with those tanning sunglasses. And she had Ella Langley radio playing. And I want to fall asleep. I was like, I need to come back here every day for a facial so that I can have 10 minutes.
Right.
Sit.
Well, you said it. It doesn't have to be meditation. You know, I have someone who they were trying to exercise in the morning forever and ever, and we discovered they needed to exercise. That a walk after an exhausting day of work not only energized them, like it reduced their stress, their blood sugar is better. Like they actually lowered their total stress burden by resetting with a walk outside. So that was that for them. That is the stress reduction part. Because there's, especially people with anxiety, sitting and doing meditation is not skillful sometimes. It is anxiety producing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are at 45 minutes. So this conversation has flown by. I had other questions I wanted to ask you about, but I want to get to the CGM part.
Oh, yes.
I think people get overwhelmed and confused, and that was me, honestly, right? Like I remember, you probably know Erin Skinner so I took their like GI, her and Alicia's GI course. And then I would listen to Erin's podcast sometimes, and she was getting into like the CGMs probably a year and a half ago. I saw your stuff and I was like, gosh, it's so interesting, but I'm totally overwhelmed about like, how do you get it? How do you put it on? How do you track the information? What do you
There's so
even
much.
do with the information? Like, it just feels very foreign. So I guess for people who don't know or like haven't worn one, are really unfamiliar, what is a CGM? Who benefits from wearing one? And kind of what insights can someone expect from
Yeah. Gosh, do I have one around here somewhere? I usually do keep one. Yeah, so in a nutshell, I'm not going to keep it short. A CGM is there's two parts really. There's the sensor that sits on your skin. Most people put it on their arm, but you can put it on a chest or belly. And that little sensor, that's what, detects your glucose levels, and it transmits the data to your phone, to an app, to make it make sense to you. So that's the two parts of it. And these CGMs, like you can get them a prescription through the pharmacy, or you can literally just go online and order it, and it will arrive at your house in 2 days. That's how easy it can be. But then you wear it and they last about 2 weeks. So the same sensor on your body, 2 weeks, and it transmits glucose data automatically to your phone. So you can just go, I just ate that apple. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And you can log things. So you can put in there apple, stressful, in an app. I'm doing this app. And that way you can have data you can go over.
Yeah.
And that's it in a nutshell, is you get kind of immediate feedback of going, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. But then it's, what do you do with that information?
Yeah.
Some people, it's really easy to use. They can go, oh, if I do that, this happens. If I do this, this happens. I'll do more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff. Everything feels better. I'm happy. And it's good. But some people, the situation a little more complicated. Like, is it stress? Is it inflammation? And they need a little more help with interpreting it. But essentially, it's just order it, stick it on your body, connect it to your phone, and read your data.
Yeah. And one thing that you really kind of emphasized in the book is it's not like once you start wearing one, you have to continue wearing one to maintain getting the benefit. You do it and you really discourage people from doing that, because it can kind of curb into that orthorexia, like we were talking about, where you become kind of
a little too obsessed.
Stress levels. Yeah. So you really say, wear it for 2 to 4 weeks at the beginning. Those learnings, apply them, reach 6 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and kind of just see where you're at. And so that can be really more cost effective too, because it is pricey depending on where you get them from. They can be pretty affordable, I think, as well. So.
Yeah, in the US, you're going to pay $35 to $50 per 2-week sensor. So $35, $50 for 2 weeks of data. That is what you're going to pay for. The app is free that you can use with it. They come with an app. But yeah, I really encourage people to, when they're going to use it, I talk about a structured way of using it, so that the first week or two you use it, I'll tell you, this is the rookie mistake that people make, is they put it on and then they try to flatten their curve. They try to get it perfect.
They take action.
Oh, I can't eat this. They eat no fruit, no carbs, and you learn nothing. And so the best thing, if anybody's going to use this, the best thing you can do is actually put it on, and for a week or two, just imagine you're not monitoring your data and you're just doing everything as usual, but you're also logging it. You're typing it in. Yeah, went to the In-N-Out, got my usual order. And you're not logging every little calorie. You're just, Mexican chip salsa, chicken enchilada, marg chips, beer peanuts. So you can go through, and then you can go after this. So you go through that week or two, and then you can go through your data and go, you put your scientist hat on now. You've collected your data, you put on your scientist hat and go, let's see what happened last week. And you see what you learned, what worked, what didn't work. And that's where I usually get with people, and I go through, oh, that's interesting. This is interesting. And then we plan our experiments. What do we want to learn? Your blood sugar's high all night. It's always the first thing I go for. Let's get your blood sugar down overnight.
Yeah.
Why is it high at night? Because I'm eating late, or I'm having this, and let's experiment with that for a little while. see if we can get it down. So we just kind of we bite off one thing at a time. Let's try to get it down during that time. Eating late all the time. Why are you eating so much at night? I'm skipping lunch. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's just garden variety nutrition and solutions for this, which is not easy.
No, but you can have guidance. And whenever you have that data, you said you feel like you're cheating with the data, but really you're just not guessing. Right?
We're not guessing.
So people can be much more motivated to actually take action on these experiments whenever they see the data and they're like, oh, I see this explanation and why that makes sense to do.
Yes.
And feel like I'm going to see a positive result from this.
Yes.
Versus maybe it'll work, maybe it won't type of thing. And then I love what you said in the book, because I say this on the show a lot, actually. I think we're very in line with this of the personalized approach. And now that you've collected your data, it's time to get curious. I love that approaching it with curiosity.
Yeah.
You're not being judgmental. You're not being hard on yourself. You just are, I wonder why. What's happening? Why is that happening? And really getting curious with it.
Yeah.
I think that's how people get the answers versus just, here's the data. That's what it says.
Yeah.
The end.
Yes. Yeah. It does. I like that the data. Well, first of all, you wouldn't think, being in our field, I hate telling people what to do. I find that really uncomfortable and also not very helpful. No one likes being told what to do. I'd much rather create an environment where people go, oh, my breakfast is a hot mess. Like, what else could I try?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you asked.
And then you can step in with the solution and be the good guy and not, I think like nutritionists and dietitians are like the food police, right? And I hate being that,
I know.
I
would much rather say, well, I find something that's lower in carbohydrate, something that we can get, 20, 30 grams of protein, maybe some fiber. This is what that looks like. What could you imagine eating that fits into that? And then it's their idea and they're learning how to plan their meals according to those things. It's so much more productive and gives someone agency rather than just having to tell a grown-up, how to eat.
And then if they're still wearing the data, whenever you're doing, or the CGM, whenever you're doing these experiments, they're getting real life feedback on is this working. They can tell within a couple of days, sometimes weeks, you're pointing out some of the circumstances where, maybe it takes longer to see. Yeah. What are some of those situations actually?
That's a great point. So some things you can tell right away. Oh, that was a much lower blood sugar spike. That's a good meal. And this is hard because it's nice to have immediate gratification. Like we get immediate gratification from good stuff, which is so rare. But you asked about the things that take longer, and that tends to be insulin resistance and elevated fasting blood sugar. So when if I'm working with somebody who's been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but even pre-diabetes a little further on, their fasting blood sugar levels are elevated and they might be like 120, 130. And we've got they're eating meals so that's not going up too high. They're staying low in level overnight, low for them, at their fast. And I would call your baseline is 120. But because they have such severe insulin resistance, their glucagon situation is awkward. And so their liver's overproducing glucose. And you can take medications to reduce that. You can do like berberine to do that. There's lots of things you can do to reduce that. But sometimes you've just got to lower the insulin resistance. And that takes, keeping your glucose levels low, exercising, fasting overnight. There's lots of things. And that goes down slowly. That's like months. Yeah. And then slowly we'll see that fasting glucose get lower. And then a couple months later, someone has a piece of pizza, and the piece of pizza's actually, that looks almost normal to have a piece of pizza. So it does take months. So in the book, I call it the short game and the long game. And the short game, often when people are eating like knuckleheads, I think when we're eating like 50, like we did when we were 20 and we're 50 and not as active and we're just older, we're eating foods that are not in harmony with our metabolism. And once you shift those and shift the timing, I someone can go from type 2 diabetes, I mean, whether they had it or not, ooh, all of a sudden they look like they're just barely pre-diabetic in their blood sugar.
Oh.
That's the short game. They can drop that down. But the long game is now we've got to improve that insulin resistance, and that takes time. So, and it's time and it's less rewarding because you think that improvement is linear, but it's not. You can often, for many people, you can get a quick improvement, and then the rest of is just going to take slow, steady, consistency at the gym, consistency with your food, consistency with your sleep.
And then things will happen. You had a chapter in your book, like prepare for the unexpected, basically. That's like, things happen. Things will happen. You will go on a trip. Somebody will get sick. Something will happen. So have a plan. That's kind of a, long-term strategy there too, right? Of like,
yeah. And I got that idea from working with chronic pain. And I got that idea from Tracy Rodriguez, who's helping people with chronic pain and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobility, because and you guys probably do this too, it's the flare plan. When you're going to have a pain flare, you're going to be in bed, you're going to have some indeterminate period of time where you can't go to work, it's overwhelming. And so for those periods, one of the first things we do is like, you need a flare plan. What are you going to eat? It needs to be there or written, or you need to have your food order, your grocery order, the list of things, your medications, and it's all written out. So your, 14-year-old babysitter could carry it out. You could give it to your friend. You can give it to your roommate. You can give it to your spouse. And when I thought about that, I'm like, well, we all need a flare plan because things always happen. So we start building in for traveling. Every time you travel, part of the travel plan is, let's plan for when you get back. You need to have a grocery order, maybe even submit your grocery order. And so you just pick it up on the way home. You need to plan what you're going to have for the first 3 days for dinner those 3 days. So that's part of the plan.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's important because I think people will go on a trip or get sick and go, oh, it seems like every time I do something good, I get sick and it throws me off.
Oh gosh. So many times I've heard that.
Yeah. Every time it's almost a guarantee, and it's not you. Like you're not uniquely unfortunate. It happens to everybody. And the people who are successful accept reality on their terms and go, I'm always going to get sick, so I need to plan for it. Yeah. So we plan for it. What are we going to do when we get sick? That way, when you are sick for a period of time and you haven't been to the gym in ages and now you're eating like crap, instead of going, oh, I can never do this, it always goes wrong, you go, oh,
yeah,
this is what happens. I had my blip, and now I need my comeback strategy. And I always call it a comeback strategy.
I love that.
And I just like to normalize that like, oh, it's a thing. It's not a moral failure.
When it allows for life, it's not a moral failure. It allows you to go on a trip and enjoy whatever you want to enjoy and not stress, and know that like that trip is not going to completely derail all of your progress unless you continue living, like you were before you started making those changes. And so it allows for people to still, enjoy life too, like we were talking about before. Yeah. But I think I marked like the last sentence of your book because I think it so perfectly fits in with all of that. But you said, this health journey is here to support the rest of your life. Don't let your health journey take over and crowd out what brings your life joy and purpose. Those breaks give you more time to reflect on why you're improving your health. It's so your health doesn't hold you back, like we were just saying. My recommendation is to pace yourself and fall in love with the process. And you have a quote here: when you fall in love with the process rather than the outcome, you don't have to wait to be happy. Shane Parrish. Which, isn't that just it? Isn't that just it? Enjoying the journey and not just some destination. That's really the secret to happiness.
Yeah. That's a hard one. It's a lesson I have to learn too.
I think we all have to remind ourselves. I have 3 youngish kids. I told them that I feel like my youngest just turned 5. And then
Oh
my
my God.
oldest just turned 8, or my middle just turned 8, and my oldest is about to turn 11. And I feel like the shift from 4, 7, 10 to 5, 8, and 11, I feel like they're all big kids now.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
but yeah, enjoying the journey. So I wanted to put up here a QR code for Karen's book. So if you guys, y'all may be watching this on your phones, you cannot scan the QR code, but we do have the link in the description here for you guys. But if you're watching on a different device and you have your phone or spouse's phone or child's phone nearby, you can scan this QR code. This takes you to her website where you can read more about Karen, read more about her book, order her book, all of that. And I'll leave that up for another minute here. So that's where people can find more about you, find your book. Do you have any other things that people need to know before they leave here tonight?
I think we've given them a lot tonight. So yeah, I just say, if you want to use these continuous glucose monitors, I love what you pointed out was be curious, get really curious, be less perfectionist-y. Don't try to be perfect, get really curious. It can be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to find out information about what's not going right so that you can improve, especially if you have labs that, you're concerned about and want to correct. You don't want it to necessarily be a perfect flow. That doesn't really help you, improve your health. So, good. And then for anyone wanting more information about me, here's my QR code. It's the yellow one. Karen's was the green. If you're going back and rewinding, we'll post this on YouTube. This takes you to a newsletter sign up for an email. And you can get a free handout that we made on what is healthy eating, because I feel like people get really confused about that. So it's actually the 4 things that we look for when we're reviewing our patients' food journals. So whenever you're thinking about, of course, it needs to be personalized to you, but just generally speaking, what are the high points to just make sure you're covering your bases on whenever it comes to food. This handout is a really great, just general guide for that. So, good. Well, I want to double check our comments again here. We have a thank you for the information. What an analogy. Somebody's tracking some carbs. I don't know, Karen, any comments about?
And then I ate 150 grams of strawberries with 20 grams of chocolate sauce and I'm at 43. Does that mean you're at 43 mg per deciliter, like you've bottomed out?
Or is that 43 grams of carbs for the day? I was confused by that.
Yeah. Digging Gopher, if you want to reply to that.
Here, we're curious. I don't know.
But 150 grams of strawberries with chocolate sauce, I think that could definitely take you up and then come crashing down afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm having a hard time picturing what 150 grams of strawberries is in my head. But yeah, sounds like a delicious snack. So, well, Karen, thank you again for being here with me. I know you're busy. I'm so excited. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I've sent it to a friend. The dietitian on my team is currently reading it. I have thumbnailed everywhere through it. Truly just a great user manual for anyone who is continuous glucose monitor curious and just is I went to the doctor and my A1C was elevated, or my fasting glucose was elevated, but my A1C was okay still. And I just want to start doing something instead of waiting to get diagnosed with diabetes in 20 years. This is great. Really, really, truly one of the best books I've read, in a long time. So great work. And thank you for sharing your gift and talent with all of us. I'm truly grateful. So, all right. I don't see Digging Gopher responding. So maybe they'll respond in the comments.
Maybe.
I'll give you a shout if we hear
that.
So wonderful. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central, and we'll talk with you guys then. Bye.